Hello, I'm Tony for the MDC Dispatch with a special report on the struggle for our rights against the administration's rapid and autocratic use of force. President Trump and his network of followers have once again taken it upon themselves to falsely paint LA as the crux of lawlessness and violence, a description far from the truth. Unless you've been living under a rock, you will have noticed the anti-ICE protests happening in LA over the past few days. Let's recap. Last Friday, June 6, ICE, along with their pals from the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, and DEA, conducted a militaristic raid in LA, arresting, but really kidnapping, over 40 lawful people. Keep in mind, these arrests were carried out without judicial warrants, according to several observers and the ACLU. During these Gestapo-like raids, David Huerta, president of the Service Employees International Union California, was violently thrown to the ground, injured, and also arrested while peacefully being present as a community advocate. He was recently released on $50,000 bail. The raids focused on locations in downtown LA and its immediate surroundings, more specifically in areas that have a higher population of undocumented people, such as Home Depot stores and clothing wholesaler Ambiance Apparel. Let's be clear, this operation was implemented using military tactics. Federal agents wore tactical gear in camouflage and were heavily armed. According to several witnesses, they drove up in unmarked black SUVs and armored vehicles and sealed off entire streets. Even drones were used for surveillance. These are measures used during counter-terrorism or drug bust operations. Instead, they were used against peaceful workers who were trying to feed and house their families. With the news of raids spreading, hundreds of peaceful protesters gathered outside the Edward R. Royal Federal Building in downtown LA, where the detainees were being processed, to show their support. They demanded the release of those arrested and tried to physically stop ICE from going in or out. The LAPD responded with threats to arrest protesters and deployed their riot gear donning officers who were armed with tear gas, pepper spray, and their so-called less lethal munitions that include almost deadly rubber bullets. Take, for example, this woman simply trying to go home. She was shot point blank by an officer. Meanwhile, hundreds of detainees, including children, were being held overnight in the basement of the federal building without any access to beds, blankets, or even proper food and water. Over the weekend, and without Governor Newsom and California officials' request, Trump issued direct orders to mobilize and deploy 2,000 National Guard troops, their objective to quell and quash the protests. But more supporters to those detained flooded the streets in parts of downtown LA and nearby Compton and Paramount. Additionally, Newsom declared he would legally challenge the order with a lawsuit. When Monday rolled around, California Attorney General Rob Bonta filed a suit over the use of National Guard troops and said to reporters that Trump had trampled on the state's sovereignty. The authoritarian punches from Trump kept coming. He ordered another 2,000 National Guard troops to head to LA, along with 700 U.S. Marines. As events continue to rapidly unfold, peaceful protests have sprung up in other cities, including New York, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Austin, and others, in opposition to the ICE raids. Trump and his wretched cronies continue to spread their lies and have called for the arrest of Governor Newsom over his handling of the protests. How this will progress is yet to be seen, but there is more that lies underneath. Let's rewind to Trump's first iteration as president, or rather his first trial run at being an authoritarian. In 2020, following the murder of George Floyd and the protests that followed, not only in Minneapolis but in Washington, D.C. and other cities, Trump defiantly pledged a military response. He said, and I quote, "If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them." Yeah, I'm sure they're there to protect life. His remarks, which hinted at leveraging the Insurrection Act, came right after National Guard troops drove through the streets of D.C. The Insurrection Act, a law passed in 1807, allows the president to deploy the U.S. military and federalize the National Guard units of each state to suppress civil disorder, insurrection, and armed rebellion against the federal government. It was last invoked in 1992 during the LA riots that followed the acquittal of the police officers who were recorded beating Rodney King. Fun fact, during the 1992 protests, LAPD and Marines were called to respond to a domestic disturbance at a local home. Due to the differences in communication methods between the LAPD and the Marines ended up shooting more than 200 bullets in the home where 3 children were present. Shortly after this incident, federal soldiers were withdrawn. Anyway, back in 2020, police in heavy riot gear and military-style vehicles began rolling down the streets of not only D.C., but Minneapolis, New York City, and others. Protesters were hit with very painful and harmful rubber bullets and tear gas, and endured physical beatings from police. Helicopters were used at very low altitudes, including in D.C., to scare and disperse protesters on the ground. To say it was as if we were all living and watching an End of Days movie is an understatement. But Trump, along with his conservative allies in office, wanted to see how far they could go and what they could get away with. Fast forward to January 6, 2021, when Trump's violent supporters attacked the U.S. Capitol, attempting to seize it. At the time, Trump delayed calling in the National Guard to help the Capitol police officers, who specifically asked for it, and his supporters beat anyone blocking them and forced their way into the building. Adding insult to injury, Trump still refers to that day as a day of love, and has even pardoned over 1,500 Capitol rioters. The hypocrisy from Trump and his administration is clear to the masses and those who were directly impacted on January 6th. Upon taking office a second time around, Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth fired the military's top Judge Advocates General, or JAGs, from the Air Force, Army, and Navy, setting off alarm bells that would allow the president to use the military in potentially illegal ways. JAGs play an important role by setting each service's legal priorities and interpreting the law for top leaders. Without them, or even replacing them with inexperienced lawyers, Trump can potentially bulldoze his way to any violent means with the U.S. military at his disposal, and even use them against the American people. It's clear that Trump and his many racist helpers like Stephen Miller, Hegseth, and Kristi Noem are out to terrorize immigrants, international students, and anyone who supports them into submission, imprisonment, or deportation. They want an America that is straight, white, and supports them at every unlawful term while siphoning more wealth. Painting the peaceful protests as violent and heavily destructive is an attempt at giving the administration ammo to forcefully quash any opposition to Trump's fascistic mandate. It also takes away attention from the disastrous so-called Big Beautiful Bill the Republicans are attempting to pass through the Senate. The bill, as you recall, takes away health care for those who rely on Medicare and Medicaid, reduces SNAP benefits even more, and provides the richest Americans with an even bigger tax break. So while Trump plays military dictator, he is making life worse for working class people and families, and at the same time, attempting to further divide the American people to maintain his hold and control. It's the oldest trick in the book: divide and conquer through sweeping measures and fear-mongering tactics while finding scapegoats for your failing policies. He's moving rapidly towards authoritarian rule. Make no mistake, we are at the precipice of living in a fascist state. The wannabe dictator is willing to deploy military forces against the American people, jail union leaders for peacefully organizing, and sacrifice our most vulnerable in our society to distract from his own failures. But this is not the America we have to accept. LA is showing us loud and clear what resistance looks like. So let's keep fighting, keep organizing, and keep believing that we all collectively together can do better. This special edition of MDC Dispatch has been a production of the members of the Metro DC DSA Publications Working Group. If you have feedback for us or just want to sound off, please leave a comment. If you found this report useful, you can follow us here on our YouTube and other socials. If you want to join this struggle on the side of the working class, please consider becoming a member of DSA. Visit dsausa.org. Find those links on our channel page. I'm Tony. A better world is possible.